Question is, Phillies went heavy with pitchers in their draft, most of which are, quote, experienced college pitchers. Where do you have the likelihood of someone like Gage Wood joining the team as early as this season? Joe, thanks so much for the question. Really appreciate it. It is an interesting question because there's not a lot of precedence behind this conversation, right? I think the last time, I believe the answer was the last time the Phillies promoted somebody the same year that they were drafted to the big leagues was 1979. Now, we've seen a couple of pitchers do it, a couple of batters do it over the last couple of years. I think the famous one was Brandon Finnegan, who was pitching in the College World Series prior to the Kansas City Royals making their run to the World Series. And then Finnegan ended up getting some high leverage outs for the Royals in that postseason. The other most recent one was with the Angels, and that was when they called up Nolan Schanuel after drafting him in the first round from Virginia. Now, the thing with Nolan Schanuel was that his bat-to-ball skills, his contact skills were major league ready. They knew right away he may not have pop, he may never have pop, but what he does do well is not swing and miss. He doesn't strike out. He puts the bat on the ball, and he's going to give you competent major league at-bats pretty much right out of college. And the other thing with the Angels in that scenario was the Angels farm system for years has been god-awful. So, with that being said, I think they were able to promote Nolan Schanuel pretty quickly because they trusted him to be competent enough defensively at first base and to be a good hitter at the dish, which brings us to the questions about guys like Gage Wood. So let's take a look at Gage Wood's player profile. Now, the thing you know about Gage Wood is that he is insane. And I mean that in the most positive way possible. A guy that wears his emotion on his sleeve, a guy that is outwardly projecting, and that's the type of guy that you might just be crazy enough to pitch into a bullpen as soon as this year. But let's take a look at his numbers. He was a starter this year, a 3.82 ERA, through just 37 2/3 innings this season. But you see the enormous strikeout numbers, 69 strikeouts in 37 2/3 innings pitched. But the better part about him that I think is really encouraging is the sub-1 whip, the .9 whip. And it's not because he gave up, 12 hits in 37 innings. He doesn't walk hitters, just 7 walks in 37 2/3 innings, 34 base runners in just under 38 innings pitched. And of course, you know him for throwing just the third no-hitter in the College World Series and the first in like 60 some odd years. So there's his profile a little bit, his pitch arsenal. Pat Egan on allphly.com did a really good deep dive on his stuff. Power fastball. He trusts his fastball mid-90s, but can get it up to about 98 if he needs to. Curveball is his other pitch. He really loves his curveball. Throw some other stuff, just a little bit offset type of stuff. But his two best pitches are the fastball and the curveball. Now, I think there's two different questions with Gage Wood. The first question is he a starter or is he a reliever? And the second question is, does that change his trajectory? Now, he was a starter at Arkansas coming back from the injury. And I think in a perfect world, the Phillies would love for him to be a starter for his career. Does it change his trajectory? I think it absolutely does. I think that if they want him to be major league ready quickly, I think the most really the only scenario with how good this rotation is that he would pitch out of the bullpen. But does it change his timeline in any one given way? I'll be honest with you, and I think Kevin brings up a really good point. There's no question about it that Gage Wood has the mental capacity to be a major league pitcher. And I also realize that there is a very realistic scenario that very quickly this guy is better than some of the relievers you currently already have in your bullpen, namely a Joe Ross or a Daniel Robert, right? So I think there's some merit to ask the question. It's a question that every Phillies fan is asking. It's a question that members of the media are asking. What is the trajectory of this kid, and does he have the capability of pitching in the big leagues this year? I think the answer to that question is probably no, and it's not a stuff question. It's not a makeup question. It's not a between the ears question. I think it's just a maturation question and a development question, and I do think it does, in part, have something to do with the injury that he was coming back from this season. I don't think the Phillies are going to want to rush this kid. I do think he is better than Joe Ross at 21 years old. I think he's probably better suited to be in this bullpen than Joe Ross is. We talked about him in the grades, coming up in just tomorrow's video. Joe Ross has not been good, especially in June and July. But I don't know if there's a scenario where he's readily available right away, but I do think there's a lot of upside to this kid, especially if the Phillies feel like he could potentially pitch out of the bullpen. Now, there are two other guys that the Phillies drafted in the draft that I think I'm really excited about for different reasons. Now, let's talk about the guy that was drafted later, because I think that this guy, if you're talking about Gage Wood potentially being on a major league roster sooner rather than later, I actually think there's a guy that the Phillies drafted that maybe has a better chance of being that guy. And that guy comes in, I think he was drafted in the 5th or 6th round, comes out of Baylor, and it's Gabe Craig. Here's Gabe Craig's numbers. He was a reliever for the Baylor Bears, a little bit of an older pitcher, spent a couple of years at Baylor. I think he spent 3 years at Baylor and was at Texas A&M before that. 24 appearances for Craig this season, a .56 whip. And another guy who had unbelievable strikeout stuff, 51 strikeouts in 32 innings. But you think the .9 whip from Gage Wood is good? How about Gabe Craig's .5 whip? He gave up, somewhere my math is correct there. 13 hits, 3 walks, 16 base runners in 32 innings pitched. And I apologize, I forgot to update that graphic. He did not throw the no-hitter in the College World Series. That was for the graphic for Gage Wood, but the numbers still stand. This guy has been electric out of the Baylor bullpen this season. And then one thing that really jumps out to me is the grading on his pitches. There's no question about it right this second. Gabe Craig is a 2-pitch pitcher. He is a fastball slider guy. The slider is his best pitch, and there's no question about it. Wipeout stuff with the slider. He has a 70 grade out of an 80 grade on the slider. Fastball's not nothing to joke at either, though. 55 fastball, 55 control. He is a 2-pitch pitcher, and there's no question about it. But I do think that of the two, because of the fact that this kid is just turned 24, he's a little bit older, he has had that experience at the college level, I think there's no question Gage Wood's ceiling is probably higher than Gabe Craig. But I think if there is a very realistic chance, if one of these two guys were to be in the Phillies bullpen down the stretch, I actually think I lean Gabe Craig more than I lean Gage Wood. I like them both a lot. Power arms. Craig has that wipeout slider that's like kind of sits mid-80s. They said he touched 88 with it, so a power slider. And how about this? On the slider, opponents were 8 for 72. That's a 1 for 9 average. It's a 111 average with 43 strikeouts. Now, his fastball somewhere in the mid-90s, 93 to 95, but really has that wipeout devastating slider that I think, could potentially, you could see an ascension like we saw from Orion Kerkering. Now, Kerkering throws a little bit harder than Gabe Craig does, but Kerkering, similar trajectory, right? Heavy wipeout sweeper. Good fastball, hasn't kind of honed it in just yet. And he ascended very, very quickly. Went from single A to double A to triple A, all the way to the majors in a very small time frame. Now, I don't know if that means in the next 70 games for Gabe Craig, but if you ask me between the two, I actually think Craig may have the better chance of seeing the Phillies bullpen this season. Now, if you ask in totality, I think the answer is still probably no to both of them. But I really like the stuff that Gabe Craig produces. And then one other guy very, very quickly is Cade Obermuller, their 2nd-round pick. Lefty with a funky delivery, hides the ball well, cross-body action. I don't think he's got the power stuff, low 90s to maybe a mid-90s top on his fastball. But I watch Cade Obermuller from Iowa, and I get a lot of Matt Strahm. I get a lot of, bleep you mentality. I'm just coming after you. And I don't care what you think. I'm going to beat you because I'm better than you. Even if maybe I'm not better than you, there's that mentality that I'm better than you. And I get a lot of Matt Strahm out of Cade Obermuller. It's going to take some time for him to get to the big leagues. But I have a little intrigue with Cade Obermuller in that spot.